Hello and welcome back to Risk. I am Lee, and we're going to continue our discussion with Tom DeWeese. The following video, we're going to get more into the impacts, the financial impacts of what we discussed in the first video. We're going to talk a little bit about central bank digital currency, more about the Great Reset and sustainability and ESG investing, as well as SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, if you do your diligence on these videos, and you research what's said and you truly understand it, I believe you're going to be compelled to share this video as widely as possible. Now, I don't care if you share this particular video, but get this information out there. I mean, it's driving the fiscal and monetary policies of almost every country, as well as most publicly traded companies and a whole slew of NGOs and other organizations. So please get this message out there. Do your best to understand it. And thank you for watching.
And that's why they are all involved in this. They see it, they're going to be in charge of things. They're going to be the survivors. Klaus Schwab said in this book on pushing the Great Reset that a lot of corporations won't survive, but some will. And they all think, oh, we're going to be one of those. And that's the game they're playing. And
so they're basically all just trying to be in the club. You see, I have a theory. I believe, because we know that all the central banks and the World Bank, the IMF, they're all involved in this. Even the Federal Reserve has sustainability policies and the like. So my theory is that they are controlling all these big corporations through their financing, through these central banks. Do you think that's?
I think there is definitely. I mean, it's all connected in there, and the banks are also controlled. And we've had after 9/11, and all the bills created there for the terrorist stuff. The banks were really changed.
Know your customer
all kinds of
laws and things like that.
Yeah, all kinds of regulations in there of how banks are done and everything. Now they're moving as fast as they can to get rid of money, and we end up with online currency. So
the CBDC, central bank digital currency. I know it's gotten a lot of discussion, and basically that will really be able to implement this sustainable development, because they're going to be able to control what you spend, how often you spend it, what you can and can't spend it on.
Yeah. And we're talking about the food system and so forth. Why would they want to get rid of food and starve us? And well, people who are hungry are easier to subjugate. But I'll just give you two examples of some things. First of all, as we talked about one at a time, about the cattle industry and what is happening there. And people need to understand that the cattle growers don't have a market themselves. It is the packing companies. There are 4 of them. There is Tyson's, there is Cargill, JBS, and National Packers they have. And they are the ones that have the market. And what's happened here, I mentioned the World Wildlife Fund, and one of the most radical, most powerful environmental groups putting all this stuff together, working directly out of the UN. They work with the World Economic Forum and so forth. They have come together and created the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And in this, all of those packers are part of it. And to my utter shock, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the largest cattlemen's organization to represent the industry, is part of this as well. And they
big surprise there, Tom.
I'm sorry?
Big surprise there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And here you have the World Wildlife Fund that said meat consumption is devastating some of the world's most valuable and vulnerable regions due to the vast amount of land needed to produce animal feed. So they have put these sustainable rules on the growing of beef. And one of them is that you're looking at a big cattle ranch, and well, this much land you can't use for this. You've got to leave this open for open space so the wild animals can be there.
Oh, boy.
And we got to control your water use and various other things. They've made it so difficult that these cattlemen can't survive. Well, what's really interesting is that the packers are actually going to foreign countries, Brazil and others, and getting cheaper beef and all that. But then this came to me yesterday. There is a movement called the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. And what they are is a one of the tools of the World Economic Forum to go into the farming communities and so forth, bring the farmers in and convince them to start using these sustainable things. And I interviewed today a lady who ended up in one of these meetings. She's a farmer, and she said that they were telling them that the United States produces too much agricultural products, and we've got to push back on that. And Africa is chosen to be the where we're going to grow our food and so forth through this process. And they talked about that. Other countries said America has too much government. We've got city government, county government, state government, national government. We need one point where to go to. What's that? The global governance we're talking about, where they can make all these decisions. And so here they are. This meeting, and they're having several of them around the country, is to bring in the farmers and desensitize them to get them to accept sustainable rules, global rules. And what you'll hear city councilmen say this all the time. Well, this is just the way it's done now. And they don't understand what they're up against. This is what you're hearing everywhere. So every industry, every government, every classroom, everything is running in this direction.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how invasive it is. I mean, when you start looking at it, and you look at, I mean, I suggest everyone look at board members, what their backgrounds are. There's almost always someone connected to the United Nations in some way, aspect on a Fortune 100 company. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Finding this out, a lot of people running for government, Congress right now, even Republicans, you'll find out they've got a membership in the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab and his group have reached out with these massive tentacles and controlling everything. And people don't understand how much they control. And we've got the news media that is part of that control, and they will not say a single word about any of this as being negative, except those of us who do say it. Now we're the villains, and now I've been told I'm violent. So yeah,
it's violent speech, I guess, to point out the obvious and read back everything that they published. It's just great.
How rude of me, I know.
So I mean, what's your take on this whole energy crisis? I mean, from my perspective, I'm pretty sure it's part of this whole thing. One of the side effects of the energy crisis that's going on in Europe is a lack of nitrogen. They're not able to produce fertilizer, which is going to further tax the global food system.
Yeah, it is. And what you're finding, a lot of these European countries and England, France, Germany, other countries there, they bought into all of this, especially the wind and solar situation, way earlier than we did. And they are now suffering the results of that. And there in India and lo and behold, China are all moving as rapidly as they can to reopen coal mines. England is really Germany is going right back into fracking as much as they can. I think England is as well. And so they're desperately trying to do something. Now you've got, Putin, who's cut off any oil flowing into there, so it's going to be even worse. And you tie that situation with the food situation. What do? They're able to just, with a flick of a pen somewhere, to be able to do whatever they want to cut things off. And then now we have states, and not only California. I mean, the biggest joke that's gone in the last month is California banning the future production of gasoline powered cars, and yet the next day they come out and say, please don't try to charge your electric car, we don't have any electricity. That's the future right there. And people are beginning to learn how completely unreliable, how useless electric cars are, even if you have enough power to run them all. I've seen lots of postings about what if you were stuck on the highway in a snowstorm and can't move for several hours. And what are you going to do then as your car stops running and your heater goes off and so forth, and on and on and on. And what's scary about this is that as these states are talking about banning gas-powered cars and so forth, what's the auto industry going to do? They're going to stop making gas-powered cars, and so there's another piece, another link put in place that that puts it all together.
It might be a good idea to buy a spare car if you can afford one and garage it, just to keep it around for extra parts or whatever going forward.
Yeah, but I mean, if they like in California, they do have, in Los Angeles, they have a rule right now that if a gas pump breaks down, they can't fix it, and they can't build any more filling stations using gas. So they're slowly, squeezing it to death. So you buy a brand new car today, a new gas powered car, and think, well, I'll be set no matter what happens. Not if you don't have any gas. And if they're doing with that, and what gets me about this is all of these policies. When you look at the people behind this are always talking about their compassion for the poor, and every one of these programs is built on redistribution of wealth, whether it's land or businesses or whatever it may be.
Well, I mean, the UN clearly states that in their documents. I mean, that's one of the 3 pillars of sustainable development.
Back in 2006. I was invited to Cambridge University, to the Cambridge Union, which is a 200-year-old debating society, to debate this very issue, the United Nations. And I was up against Simon Hughes, who was the liberal leader of Parliament, Lord David Haney, who was the former ambassador to the UN, Salesh Shetty, who was in charge of department in the UN. And my whole presentation was that every single thing coming out of the UN was based on redistribution of wealth. Simon Hughes gets in my face and says, "I believe in redistribution of the wealth." And we had this whole audience around there, and I said, "Yours or theirs?" Who are you to think you have a right to tell people who have worked hard about their hopes and their dreams for their life, that you decide how their money is going to be spent? Well, when you're looking at what's happening to shutting down the ability to have a gas-powered car, what if you've got a low-income family that has an older car, but it's running and it's paid for and they can afford it? And all of a sudden you tell them you can't have that anymore, and you're going to have to pay what is it, $40,000, whatever it is, for electric car. What about?
And by that time comes, those electric cars are probably going to be $200,000 or $300,000 after inflation.
So there you go. Yeah. So what happens when that's done? We've been saying for years, as we've been fighting Agenda 21 and sustainable development in the cities, the program you hear about is smart growth. And that every single city council, you go in and look at the development plan, smart growth, that's what they're pushing. And what the idea is that we're going to move everybody out of the suburbs and so forth, because that's urban sprawl and that hurts the environment. We're going to move everybody into the downtown of the cities, and they're going to live in these high rises. And you only have to walk to work, and you can ride your bike to the grocery and so forth. Won't need a car. Now, how are they going to accomplish that? Oh, take a good look how they're going to accomplish that. That's exactly what is behind all of this. It's part of the Smart Growth Program. The other part of the Smart Growth Program, when people live in the rural areas are much more independent than people who live in the cities. The farmers can grow their food and so forth. They move people into the cities, and we've talked many times about the smart meters that control your energy use. They move you into these high rises, and they all have smart meters on them, and they can control the energy use. I've been on many interviews where somebody's called in. We talked about this, and a caller will call in and they'll say, in the wintertime, I can't get my heat up beyond 50 degrees. And in the summertime, I can't get it below 80 some degrees. They've lost control of their thermostat. This is all part of it as well.
A news story just came out, a week or two ago about residents in Colorado that they're smart
Exactly.
thermometer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I understand. Is it Germany or it's either Germany or a Scandinavian country where if you have your heat above, I think it's 65 degrees this winter, you can go to jail for 3 years. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just crazy.
Yeah, this is how they do it. The whole thing is, Lee, all of this stuff is right there in front of us. I have been called a conspiracy theorist, a hate monger, spreading all this. But I'll tell you what, I've never been busier than I have been in the last couple of years as all of this is coming to the forefront. Everything we've warned about is happening. And there's no conspiracy theory here. It is a conspiracy, but not a theory.
Well,
And
how can you
it's
call it
there.
a conspiracy theory when they publish all this information? It's so readily available. All you
Yeah,
need to do is go online and look it up. You could go to the
yeah.
UN website. You could go to the World Economic Forum website. It's all documented, and then Klaus Schwab even wrote this huge book on it.
Yeah, that's why I started with the quotes as we started talking tonight, because they say it very, very clearly. Here's another one. We talk about the population. David Brower, formerly of the Sierra Club, said, "Childbearing should be a punishable crime against society unless the parents hold a government license. All potential parents should be required to use contraceptive chemicals, the government issuing antidotes to citizens chosen for childbearing." This is the mentality we're dealing with
Chosen.
these people. Yeah.
Chosen. There was an episode of The Twilight Zone. I don't know if you ever saw it. I think Burgess Meredith was in it, where they were basically judging his life and whether he should
Mhm.
live or die. Did
Mhm.
you remember that episode?
I do. I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically where we're at now, almost.
Yeah.
We're
We are
we're just
living in
about
the
there.
Twilight Zone. It's just
It's insane,
unbelievable.
And when
Mhm.
I first started learning about this, and this was a long time ago, I was scratching my head saying, like, how are they going to do this? This is
Yeah.
insane.
But now
And
you see.
we're really living through it now. I mean, the past
Yeah.
couple of years, it's really accelerated, and I don't know whether they're feeling pressure. I mean, they've always put these hard dates, like 2010, 2030,
Yeah.
2050. They have all these like deadlines.
Yeah.
So
And they've gotten more detailed as they've gone along. And, Agenda 21, they told us it was just voluntary. They still throw this at me. It's just a good idea, just something to consider. Nobody's making you do it. They
Meanwhile,
completely,
George Bush signed us onto this program, so it's not voluntary for anyone in the United States. I mean, we are signed onto it, and we can't get out of it, right?
and exactly. And the year after Bush left office, the next year, Bill Clinton became president, and he created the President's Council on Sustainable Development.
Yep.
And on this council were the same NGO organizations that wrote it, representatives of almost every single federal agency, and a lot of these global corporations were all part of that. And the NGOs helped write the grant programs that communities take, and they put in there in the small print various things to comply with this grant. You had to put these sustainable policies in place, and and every single federal agency ended up having a page on their website about sustainability. Now,
They
what
still do.
happens?
You can go look it up yourself. I mean, it's there.
Yeah. And what happened then, and is still happening today, these hundreds and hundreds of these NGO organizations, many of them are very specific experts on very specific policies in this, whether it's smart meters or it's development or bike lanes, whatever the case may be. And they go into your city councils, your county commissions, and they come in there and surround them. And they will come to them and they will say, "Hey, we've got this idea here. We got it all right here in a box for you. Got the money for you too," because they know exactly which grant program to go for to get it. Your city councilman, one of the big things we do when we get a new ones elected is we send them off to national meetings like the National Council of Governance and so forth. And what they're hearing from the podium there are these same NGO groups. They're given sample legislation and all that. And then when they come home from those meetings, they're met by representatives of the same group saying, "Hey, did you get that sample legislation? Got it all right here for you."
Well,
Eventually,
my guess is that most of the stuff that Congress passes now is all written by these NGOs, and they just basically
yeah,
sign it and go
we
along
know
with it.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what you'll hear, talk to your representatives, And where people tell me all the time, well, they won't even talk to me anymore. Some of our people go in to try to address a city council meeting, they're shut off, their microphones cut off, whatever. And what you'll hear from them is, well, this is just the way it's done now. That's the excuse. And they've given up. They don't believe this whole thing with this carbon capture pipeline in those 5 states I mentioned. You had county commissioners, city councilmen saying, well, I don't see any way we can stop it. Here is one of the big things that happens. These elected officials create appointed boards. The appointed boards are basically set up so that whatever rule law or whatever they passed, to get it done, this is supposed to be the one to get it done. Now they get that board set up. They're the boss of it. But all of a sudden they're saying, well, the board says we have to do this. Really? This is what I said to the county commissioners and so forth in Iowa, that how dare you, sit there like a coward and say, well, golly, we can't do anything about the board. You're the boss. What has to happen is our local representatives, our city councils, our county commissions, our state legislatures, they have much more power than they understand that they do. What they need to do is begin to pass legislation to protect the property rights of the people. 30 years of fighting sustainable development, I learned it has a little bit of kryptonite in it. That kryptonite is they cannot put it in place without destroying property rights. You protect property rights, you can stop all of this. And there's nullification. There are other things that we can do that we can stop these things. And our elected officials have got to learn it, and they've got to stand up for the people who represent who elected them and that they represent.
Tom, can we talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act? Because that
Sure.
really was not an Inflation Reduction Act. It was really more implementation of this whole sustainable development. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act, and the infrastructure bill had absolutely nothing to do with infrastructure that you and I would think of, like roads and bridges and things like that. I think there's some little tiny little
Which
amount
are completely falling apart all throughout the country.
all over the country, yeah. But these are all designed to put these things in place. And how do you reduce inflation by spending more money? That's what caused it in the first place. So you put a bill together with all the more money, billions and billions and billions more, trillions more, and then you say we're going to reduce inflation. No, you're not. You are putting gasoline on the fire to do that.
And then there's also, I just found this today, Executive Order 14057, catalyzing clean energy industries and jobs through federal sustainability. And that was signed by Biden in December. Do you have any familiarity with that at all?
Well, again, this is, it is building more government control over things. And they talk about cleaning things up. What they mean is it's not sustainable. And
I would translate that when they say that's not sustainable, it means that it's privately controlled and not government controlled.
Yeah. Sustainable is a trigger word to get you to just kind of go blank and say, oh, it's sustainable, and you don't think any further beyond that. Well, that's the good thing. We have to do that. They are using it in everything. All over Klaus Schwab's book, every single thing is sustainable. One of the major things they're doing with this in the stock market is, we talk about the ESG issue, and that's the thing they're going to use to judge every corporation. Is the corporation's product sustainable or not? And if it's not, then on Wall Street, it's not going to be invested in. And Klaus Schwab has said in the book about 77% of the companies in the next few years, are not going to be invested in if they're not sustainable.
Well, when you say that, it's really important to think about this, because who are they referring to? I think they're referring to the big investment funds, the big mutual funds, the sovereign wealth funds. They're all in on this game. So they're the ones who are going to be buying or not buying these stocks.
Yeah, right. And again, that you're going to start seeing, and I'm already seeing it, that corporations are just telling you how sustainable their product is. The incredible example that I've used, one of the top 2 brands of toilet paper is now putting on their packaging that for every 100 trees cut to make this product, we plant 300. We're sustainable. This is how crazy it'll get. What happens? The auto industry got to be sustainable. Well, we can't make gas-powered cars anymore. The whole oil industry saying got to be sustainable, so we can't make oil anymore. And that kind of answers the question we talked about earlier about these corporations. This is how they're doing it, and they give you that grade ESG. It's interesting. When they first started with Agenda 21, the logo that they used, and you will find this in a lot of documents in your local county papers and so forth, your development boards, 3 connecting circles, and one is marked for the economy, one is marked for equity, one is marked for environment. We called them the 3 E's. And that incorporates every single aspect of our lives. Well, now you've got ESG, environment, social, government. That's exactly the same thing. See, they never drop anything. They will change the name of it. If we get successful and fight something, they will change the name and go on with it. Oh, this isn't that. This is something new. And they just keep moving on. One of the things that I have found, the difference between our side and their side, when we lose a fight, we say, well, golly, we lost that. When they lose a fight, they get energized and they say, that won't happen again. And they come at you stronger than ever.
In some other direction too. I mean, they're always changing and shifting.
Change the names and, some other way of doing it. But it's all leading to exactly the same thing. And this is what I work with across the country. I've had people come to me and they'll say, well, we had 100 people show up at city council meeting to protest something that was going on. And I say, what happened? And they say, nothing, didn't work. And then I ask them, well, what did you do the next day? Well, nothing, because it didn't work. I said they were looking at their watches saying, okay, they're gone. Now let's move forward.
You just gave me an idea. I wonder if this approach would work at corporate meetings, shareholder meetings.
Yeah. What I have been working around the country. I've seen people so disorganized and so disillusioned, and so many people saying, well, there's nothing we can do. And I coined the term building a freedom pod. And the idea is working in your own community, not worrying about what's happening in the next one and the next one, but work in your community. And you look at those 3 pillars of freedom: free enterprise, private property, individual liberty. And you begin to organize and stand up to this. And the main part of what I'm telling people is, don't try to save the republic or restore it all in one day. And then you lose and say, well, it didn't work. And too many people tried to do that. There are all these issues. We've got gun control, we've got abortion, we've got property rights, we've got transportation, all these different issues, education. And you can't fight all of them at once. If you can bring together a small cadre of people, do specific research looking into your local county or city development plan, and find what the products or what the programs are, find out who these NGOs are that are working there and so forth. Maybe there is one specific issue that is really important in the city. Focus on that. And if you can fight that and win, then you can build on that. Don't try to do it all at once. Don't get discouraged. Even little victories are victories, and we've got to accept that. And I have a group, just as an example, down in Louisiana, and they started out with 5 guys who were not political, but they saw that the county or the city council of Shreveport was reaching out into their township, which they had no jurisdiction in, and starting to make rules and regulations there. And they went to a city councilman, and they tried to talk to him, and he basically kind of patted him on the head and said, well, you're nice boys, but you're not going to have any effect on this. This is just the way it's done. And the gentleman who's in control of all this said, right then and there, I decided, yes, I am. And they organized, and they used social media. They put one of the things, it's Caddo Lake down there, and people have their own private boat docks and so forth, and they were going to take all that away. They put together flyers that had photograph of a boat dock with the circle with the line through it, And they showed people they were already victims. They ended up, by doing this, they went door to door passing these things out. They ended up today with 4,000 activists, and they have 200 and 300 every single council meeting.
Wow.
That city councilman now says, "What can I do for you fellas?"
Wow.
And
Wow. That's a powerful
the
story right there.
and they got 2 of their people placed on the local development board, and the first thing they did was put in a resolution for protection of property rights. And then he told me the one thing that I cheered when he said it. He said, "Now other communities are asking, how did we do it? Freedom Pod growing. This is what we're teaching people to do, how to organize and how to do the research and come together and stand up to this." And that's what we're working on.
I have to say, I live in New York. It's kind of hard to find people.
There's all those people, and they're all suffering. They're all suffering.
Yeah,
There's got to
I
be
think
one
you
issue
need a
there.
specific issue, just like you said,
Yeah.
to focus on. And
Yeah.
I think that doc is a good example. So if you could find something like that locally, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you get people involved. And another thing is, you look at the development plan for your community, comprehensive plan, and you will find, in many cases, building these smart growth programs, in many cases, they work in the back rooms with these NGOs out of sight of everybody, and they map out, and they'll say, this area of town, this is a low income area, it's kind of down in the dumps and so forth, and we can go in there, bring everybody in, and we can build a whole new community there. And well,
It's basically gentrification.
Yeah, in that neighborhood, there are people who own their own home, their own property. There are people who have little mom and shop businesses. They come in there with their bulldozers and their eminent domain, and they take all that out. And then, what happens to those people? They're gone. They can't live there anymore, can't afford it. They didn't, when they put these nice new buildings together and so forth, did they bring in their little mom and pop shops to be featured there? No, they bring in the global corporations.
Yeah.
So here they are. These people have had their hopes and dreams of their life taken away from them. So one of the things you can do, you look down through that comprehensive plan, you do your research and find out where something like that's going to be, and you go into that neighborhood and start knocking on doors and say, guess what's going to happen? That's how you can begin to build your movement and do that. So these are just some things we talk about.
Yeah, I'd be curious to figure a way to bring this into the finance world. Activist shareholders and the like.
Look what everybody's going to lose.
Yeah.
You go to digital currency. You go to the control of their money, control of what they're.
Do you have any thoughts on the digital currency and how to fight against it? I mean, I've always said we should just start trading goods and dealing with each other through precious metals or cash.
Well, there are all kinds of things we can do. One of the things we have to understand is that the people doing this, even though they seem vast and powerful, are actually a minority. And to prove
a very small minority.
Yes. And just take a look at any corporation that came out with all this woke stuff and what happened to them. You've got what is it? Dave's Sporting Goods. I think, is that the name of it?
What's the name of it?
Dick's Sporting Goods. Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah.
And
with the guns.
They were one of them. They came out, they were going to sell hunting equipment and so forth anymore. Yeah. How many stores did they end up having to close, and they almost went bankrupt? What happened to Coca-Cola when they came out and they said, stop being so white? They lost billions. What's happened to Disney coming out of all of this?
Salvation Army too.
Yeah. When we stand up, we are a powerful economic force. And when we stand up to this and say no, that's what happens. That's what all of these corporations have got to start to feel. And, it is. The COVID lockdown was the perfect example of everything we're talking about. In one day, they literally got, for at least a brief period of time, everything they wanted done. Government totally controlled. They shut down the entire economy, and you had all of these small mom and pop shops that died. And who got rich off of all that? Who was having a great time? The global corporations. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is the perfect example of what what they're really after. Let me say this.
Go ahead.
I have never been more energized than I am now, because everything that we've been saying for all these years and being ignored, suddenly we're not being ignored. And people are saying, what do I do? What do I do? I see more people involved, and we're just trying to get more to do for them, help them understand how to organize and so forth. The one thing we cannot do is get discouraged and look down and say, we can't stop them. Because if when you do that, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I refuse to allow these idiots who never learned anything about economics their entire history, who now are trying to shove it down our throats again. I will not submit to that.
So along those lines, how do people find you, and what kind of help does your organization offer?
Sure. We are the American Policy Center. Our website is americanpolicy.org. And you'll find on there, first of all, we've got a 30-year archive of articles we've written on this stuff, clear back from the beginning. So you can really get a lot of information when you want it, from education to personal privacy to the whole sustainable Agenda 21 stuff and all that. We have put together, I've written, my book, Sustainable, The War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals. It gives you all this background, who the players are, where it comes from. And then we did just the last year, we did a manual. It's a local activist handbook, how to organize locally. And what do I mean by a freedom pod? It's all in there, how to, step by step, how to do it. Lots and lots of background information. We have sample legislation in there for protection of property rights and so forth. So you can get all of that at the website. And then we're working to, and I just had a conversation today with one of my people, we're working to organize a way that we can help volunteers, local people and local activists, to really organize and move forward. We understand it's intimidating, it's hard. You're going to get up there in front of a city council meeting, you're going to challenge these people, whatever, and not everybody's cut out to do that, but there are jobs for everybody that want to be involved, and at the level that they want to be involved. So
Well, I appreciate your time, Tom. It's been a fascinating discussion, as I expected it to be. And just keep up the fight is all I'd like to say.
We will do it. Thank you.